Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people who are doing extraordinary things. I release 3 episodes of Newt's World every week, and I want to invite you to listen. Hopefully, we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.
America trapped behind enemy lines. Day number 356.
All right, hour 2, Sean Hannity Show, toll free. It's 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. I keep mentioning the states that we're paying the most attention to in these pending midterms. Obviously, Florida, I feel good about Marco Rubio's chances. In spite of the horrific press and the millions of dollars of ad money from outside of Georgia, I still feel pretty good about Herschel Walker's chances. I've gotten to know Senator Tim Scott really, really well. He's an amazing man with an amazing life story, and a story that Americans don't get to hear that often. It is beyond insulting things that have been said about him over the years. None of it is true. And when you get to really know the person and know the man, as I have gotten to know, you come to a very different conclusion about who this man is and the good work that he does for this country. He has a new book that is now out. It's on Amazon.com. We have a link on Hannity.com. It's called America, a Redemption Story, Choosing Hope, Creating Unity. Senator, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Sean, thank you for having me back, and thank you for having that link so that people can buy my book, America, A Story of Redemption. God bless you, and thank you for your friendship. You have been an amazing speaker of truth. I'm a big believer in John 8:32. You shall know the truth that will set you free, and you are one of the folks that helps us understand truth. You distill it down and you make it digestible. Thank you.
I want you to go into, you dedicate the book to both your mom and your nephew, and I want you to tell a little bit about your life story.
Thank you, Sean. Let me say this. One of the reasons why I call it America a Redemption Story is because I was the kind of kid who didn't do very well in life, Sean. As a kid growing up in a single-parent household, I thought all bets were off. There was no way.
By the way, I don't want to give out your report card yet, but wait till you hear what he got on his report card. It's interesting.
And so I thought all bets were off for me. I was growing up in South Carolina. I was drifting in the wrong direction. I failed 4 subjects my freshman year, including Spanish and English. And as you know, Sean, anytime you fail Spanish and English, they don't call you bilingual. They call you biignorant because you can't speak in any language. And I also failed civics, the study of politics. And that tells me God has a sense of humor.
But you were a really good athlete, correct? You were playing football.
I was playing football, and I thank God for football because literally it kept me focused enough to get my act together. And in this country, if you will work hard, if you will dream big, the most amazing things can happen. And my mother never gave up on me. She told me I was blessed with the greatest citizenship in the world, being an American. And she told me that with God as my foundation, if I would not quit on myself, if I would do the work, she was not going to do it for me. If I would do the work, all things are possible. And one of the things that you read in my book is how if you do the work, this country will afford you the best future you could dream of, and we should be proud of America. We should stand up and shout from the mountaintop that we are blessed beyond recognition because we are American, and we do get a second chance at life. We do have a story of redemption. Our country has had it, and I've been blessed to live it.
Let's talk about that early life, your life in sports. what you thought your future was going to be, how you started out. You failed, 4 out of 5 classes in college?
Yes.
You suffered a debilitating injury?
Yes. Yeah, I'll tell you, Sean, when I was a senior in high school, I fell asleep driving my car down the interstate, and as you would imagine, a 16-year-old sleeping at the wheel, who slams on the brakes and jerks the steering wheel, flipped into traffic. I slipped through all the eastbound lanes as well as the westbound lanes, went through the windshield, held on to the steering wheel, and one of the reasons why I became a Christian and I believe in supernatural forces from the good Lord is because that car accident where I probably should have died, I survived. And it taught me to put football in its right place. I love football. I didn't like my homework, as you can tell, but I love football. And my thought was the only way for a poor kid to get out of poverty was through football. But I had a mentor, Sean, a guy named John Moniz, a Chick-fil-A operator. I love Chick-fil-A. And
Me
John
too.
Moniz, you love it too, John?
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. And every conservative should love a place that's open 6 days and closed 1. Well, John Moniz literally teaches me that just because you're poor, no matter the color of your skin, if you look in the mirror and take responsibility for yourself, if you learn how to be a business owner, even if you work for somebody else, the most amazing future is yours. And that combination, after the car accident, it became real. And I had a small football scholarship to Presbyterian College, became a Christian, and then a few years later, I went into business for myself. And what John taught me when I was 15 years old until I was 19 became my reality, that I didn't need to play football to be successful. I didn't need to worry about the neighborhood my mother was living in because those were temporary things. Work really hard, and you can buy your mother a house because in America, all things are possible. In my book, I go through the account in America, a redemption story about how it happened in my life and how it can happen in your life. Mentors is such an important part of it. And he was a conservative. One of the things you'll learn in my book is why I became a conservative and why everyone in this country, black, white, red, or brown, should be a conservative too. It is the most remarkable, blessed story that you can read in the book.
The book starts out with a very troubling story about you being young, and I think 7 years old, if I read it a while back, if I refresh my mind, but you were young, and I think, and you talk about it in the book, and there is what I guess was pretty much a typical day in your household when your mom and your dad were together. Your dad apparently was a heavy drinker, violent, abusive, and that incident that you describe in the book. Tell that story.
Yeah, there's no doubt. My dad had some issues without question. And one of the things that happened when I was 7 years old, we were on Air Force Base, and I woke up one morning, my mother had all that she could take of the challenges in that household. And she decided it was time for us to move back. And my dad, without mincing words, was not kind about what he thought my future looked like. And he was very clear that by leaving him, we had no future. And it was hard to digest, and it stuck like glue to me and to my brother to some extent. And I will say that my mother's her courage to move back to South Carolina in with her parents into a very small home of 700 square feet, where she ultimately had to share a bedroom with her 2 sons and a bed so that we could just make ends meet. But the pain and the misery and, frankly, the scar tissue in my life is one of the reasons why I fight so hard for kids today stuck in poverty and single-parent households, because as I grew older, I understood that free markets, capitalism, equality education, these are the tools that set the person free. And I needed that lesson, and I'm so thankful that I learned it at a very vulnerable age. I had the right mentor, the right mom, and the right country, and that's why I believe so dearly that the best is yet to come for this country, in spite of the current challenges that we have through this administration and the horror that comes from bad policy and bad direction.
And then you moved in with your grandparents, and at some point months later, your dad came to claim you and your brother, and your grandfather stood in the way and said, that's not going to happen.
Well, Sean, you read the book. Thank you for doing so. Absolutely. My father came back and decided that it was time to reclaim his kid. Nothing had changed in his life, and my grandfather opened the door and said, not on my watch. It was a very clear and short conversation. We stayed in Charleston, and I learned, and I tell the story in America, a story of redemption. I tell the story of how that unfolded and why my grandfather was so strong and what that means for kids growing up like me, why we should be hopeful and optimistic even in the hardest of times. You grow your mettle under pressure. That's a very important ingredient to the success that I've had and the success of everyone that I know has had. People like yourself who work hard, who are dedicated, you do your homework, you get lucky because preparation plus opportunity equals good luck.
Quick break. More with Senator Tim Scott. His new book out, America, A Redemption Story. This is probably one of the best books on a person, their autobiography, that I've ever read in my life. It's that good. Hannity.com, Amazon.com. Look.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people across a variety of topics. On Newt's World, we've had some extraordinary guests join us, like former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
Ending the war in Vietnam was a necessity in order to help heal the divisions in the country.
John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup.
The world has been winning the war against hunger for 4 decades. In 2014, it switched. We have a serious hunger crisis.
And House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
What I've really found the Republican Party to be, it's the party of the people, the working people of America.
I release 3 episodes of Newt's World podcast every week, and I hope you'll find my conversations engaging and informative, and hopefully we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast, right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people across a variety of topics. On Newt's World, we've had some extraordinary guests join us, like former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
Ending the war in Vietnam was a necessity in order to help heal the divisions in the country.
John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup.
The world has been winning the war against hunger for 4 decades. In 2014, it switched. We have a serious hunger crisis.
And House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
What I've really found the Republican Party to be, it's the party of the people, the working people of America.
I release 3 episodes of Newt's World podcast every week, and I hope you'll find my conversations engaging and informative, and hopefully we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast, right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.
We continue with Senator Tim Scott, his new book, America, A Redemption Story. Let's talk about the turning point. You have the accident. You'd been an athlete. You thought you had a very different future. and then things turned for you dramatically. You were a horrible student. You were failing out. And then let's go into the moment of real change for you and what made the difference.
For me, Sean, one of the things I talk about in America, A Story of Redemption, is how that concept of redemption, second chances, was born in two major experiences. One was that freshman year in high school when I failed out. The second was in college when I gave football up and went in the direction of my faith, wanting to become a pastor. I learned very quickly that it is better to give than receive. There's a scripture, Luke 6:38, that says, "Given it shall be given unto you." I learned that lesson.
You'll learn the lesson. But it's also a journey of faith. And, I watch, and maybe your past experience impacts how you feel about things today. I've watched you viciously attacked, the most vile things said about you. I mean, I lived that life myself, so I'm kind of immune to it because I've been doing this 35 years. I got the impression that it probably bothers you a little bit more than me. Maybe because I grew up in New York and that was an average day in my life. But I watch it, particularly if you're African American and you're a conservative. It's like they can call you any vile, horrific name, and that's still acceptable, even in this woke environment, this woke world we now live in. Why is that?
Well, Sean, you hit the nail on the head. There's no doubt that being attacked on a daily basis is something that I'm growing used to. You've gotten used to it. But the one thing that I find to be most disgusting is when racism is condoned as long as it comes off of the lips of a liberal media pundit. God forbid a conservative bring up the issue of race. We are branded a racist, even though we both know America is not a racist country. But when the left and even the black leaders on TV call me an Uncle Tom or talk about Negroes when referring to Herschel Walker, there is not a sound from the national media. Let that be reversed for a millisecond, and you would have the kind of disdain from this media. But today, racism is okay if you're a liberal elite media pundit talking about a black conservative. That is disgusting and something that you do have to grow thicker skin. And one of the reasons why every single listener today should support Herschel Walker in Georgia, because we need more conservatives who are standing up. And the greatest threat to the liberal doctrine and the liberal progress are conservatives from diverse communities who stand up and are counted because they have the courage and the backbone and the support of people like you, Sean. You've been on Herschel's campaign, and one of the things I got to tell every single listener is listening to this show makes a huge difference. Lots of the positive positions
both you and him
I get from you
are better than people than me, because when I interviewed him about this recent attack, he said, well, I'm just going to pray for the person. I'm like, I want to just, take my fist and run it through their face when people say it about me. But I will say this book is an inspiration, and you're going to relate to so much of this book and learn from it that it is worth reading for yourself. Get your kids to read it. It's Senator Tim Scott, America, A Redemption Story, Choosing Hope, Creating Unity. It's a great book, Senator. We're really proud of you. I'm honored to call you a friend, and I wish you the best with the book. It's on Amazon.com, Hannity.com. Soon, Tuesday, it'll be in bookstores all around the country. And we really look forward to having you on more often and talk about this and obviously the upcoming midterm elections.
Look forward to it, Sean. Thank you so much for your help and your friendship, and thank you for your moral guidance to our country. It is so important to have truth as our priority.
I think you being in the better position of leadership is better for the country, but I appreciate your kind words. Thank you, Senator. You're the best, and my best to your family, too, as well. Quick break, right back. Your calls on the other side, straight ahead.
Now that we made some money for our sponsors, let's go back to making the liberals crazy. The Handman is back on the radio right now.
At 25 to the top of the hour, 800-941-SEAN, if you want to be a part of the program. What happened to this summer? It's just flying by. You know, one trend is emerging that you got to really love. Now, with all the defund, dismantle, no bail law madness that's going on in city after city after city, blue state after blue state, blue city after blue city, you know, they're not keeping people safe and secure in their towns, their cities, their neighborhoods. And it started with Jose Alba, well, if you're listening to Jill Biden, it's the bodega worker. Anyway, so this guy, I don't want any trouble, comes from behind the counter, pushes him, attacks him, and bigger, stronger, he defends himself, ends up that the guy died, and he gets charged with second-degree murder while he's defending himself. Then public outcry leads to a dropping of the charges. And I think that's the only reason the charges were dropped. Then you got this 80-year-old guy in a liquor store, sees these, 3-4 people come in with, rifles, AR-15s blazing, and he takes that guy out. We had an incident in New York where some lunatic is walking around and just punching anybody, random people, old people in the face with no warning whatsoever. I mean, just blindsiding these people. Anyway, well, he was, this was witnessed by the wrong guy. His guy's name is Ro Malabanan, and he's an MMA fighter. He's also an instructor and a boxing instructor, and he's sick and tired of people getting sucker punched. And anyway, he stepped in and he restrained the guy, put him in a hold, and until the cops came and arrested the guy, who I'm sure is out on the street again because they have no bail laws in New York. Here's what he had to say.
I just got out of the subway and I was on Broadway and Prince heading to work. And two guys were walking towards me. A third guy showed up out of nowhere and just sucker punches one of the guy and punches him in the side of the face. And the guy that punched him in the face was walking towards me. And I kept my eye on him to make sure, obviously, he doesn't try anything on me. So he passed me. I checked up on the guy that he just punched. And I was like, yo, you okay? He's like, no, I'm not okay. I was like, all right. Call the cops. And then out of nowhere, two guys just rolled up and was like, yo, you okay? He's like, yeah, that guy's been punching people down Broadway. He punched a couple of people. I was like, oh, word? He's like, yo, we got to take him out. I'm like, all right, I'm down.
And thankfully, this guy got arrested. But here's the problem. You have the cover of the New York Post today. Meet a shoplifter with 101 arrests and was let go almost every single solitary time. This is New York City. I mean, and just like San Francisco and other big cities, as long as you don't rob $1,000 worth of merchandise, they're going to let you go free. I mean, how do you let a guy out 101 times? And he just keeps doing it again and again and again. Now, the one good thing is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis suspended another George Soros-backed progressive prosecutor for failing to enforce state laws. I mean, first we had the recall of the prosecutor out in San Francisco, which shocked everybody. Even they're fed up with it out there. Anyway, Ron DeSantis said that the Hillsborough County state attorney, Andrew Warren, who oversees the Tampa area, would be removed from his post immediately, and he said he would ultimately seek his dismissal. He said it yesterday at a press conference, arguing Warren, a Democrat, publicly put himself above the law while frustrating local deputies and citizens with their soft on crime approach. And DeSantis said Warren directed his office to let serious offenses slide, and that prosecutors had vowed not to enforce any current or future laws regarding, abortion or any gender assignment surgery for kids. So he's saying he's not going to uphold the law. So at least there's one governor that's saying, you know what? Nah, you're not going to get away with this. It's not going to happen. So hopefully this is the beginning of people paying attention to their local DA races, because it just better happen. I mean, just look at the average weekend. I can make a prediction. I won't make it because it's so dark and it's so ugly and it's so dreary and it's so sad that you can even make it, but it's true. I could probably estimate with a pretty high degree of accuracy how many people are going to get shot in Chicago this weekend and how many people are going to get shot and killed in Chicago. I don't want to make that prediction because I don't want to be right about that prediction. I don't want anybody in Chicago getting shot this weekend. And I can want something, but I can't. Nobody lifts a finger to do anything about it. That's why we've scrolled the names. You never hear the names of these people shot and killed in Chicago or any other big city. It's unbelievable. Anyway, 800-941-SEAN, our number if you want to be a part of the program. Pennsylvania, Bill, you're on the Sean Hannity Show. What's going on, sir?
How you doing? Thanks for taking the call.
What's happening?
So last night I was listening to your interview with Dr. Oz, and that's why I called in, because I don't think people understand who his opponent Fetterman is. You know, he may be the lieutenant governor, but for 14 years he was the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, and that was from 2005 until 2019. The majority of Pennsylvanians probably don't know much about Braddock. I've lived in Pittsburgh my whole life. I'm 66. Braddock's the epitome of a dilapidated, rundown Rust Belt town. There's more boarded up storefronts along the main drag than there are viable businesses. So, and it's been in decline for years. When he was in office as mayor, he lost 41% of the population there. The schools are in the bottom fifth of the school district in Pennsylvania. Algebra in 11th grade are only 37% of the kids are proficient. Biology 46, and in literature only 26.7. Now this guy, that's a Woodland Hills School District. I don't want this guy as my senator, one of the 100 most powerful people in the country. And my frustration is with Dr. Oz. I heard some of the things he said last night on your show, and he needs to get this personal now. He needs to go local. If all politics are local, he needs to go down to Braddock and offer some solutions to these Rust Belt towns and point out to people in Pennsylvania exactly where Fetterman came from and what he didn't do while he was mayor for 14 years.
Well, listen, I don't want to be a special pleader for Oz. I hope he wins this race. I think he'd be a great senator. I know he's a conservative because I've known him for a long time. But in fairness to him, he's been traveling the state like a madman. I think he said yesterday he did 187 stops already. I mean, he's all over the place. Now, Fetterman has only been seen once. He's running a Joe Biden basement campaign. And he's getting money from out of Pennsylvania. And the only thing you can say is Dr. Oz doesn't have Pennsylvania roots, which in fact he does have. So, but you got to then look at the policies. He's a trust fund brat. You're right. He was a horrible mayor. Murders are up 60% in cities all throughout Pennsylvania, because he's lieutenant governor. This guy wants to release a third of all people in jail. This guy thinks that biologically born men should be able to compete in women's sports. He's to the left of Bernie Sanders. He's a Green New Deal radical socialist Democrat. He wants no domestic energy production, especially in Pennsylvania. What else do you guys want to know about Fetterman? Because if you vote for this guy, and we don't even know what the impact of his stroke was, because nobody's seen the guy.
That's exactly right. And he's playing Biden's game plan, hiding in the basement. And I don't know whether Oz goes down with a videographer and does an ad and puts that out. He's got to do something that shows the people what Braddock is and what involvement Fetterman had there.
I think that's a great idea, and hopefully somebody in this campaign hears this, and I think it's a smart idea. Look, the important thing is you have the biggest contrast election for the Senate in the entire country in Pennsylvania. You got a Bernie Sanders radical leftist and who's frankly lazy, and he's been nothing but a trust fund brat his whole life, even though he acts like a street kid because he wears a hoodie everywhere he goes. He's not. He's lazy, and there's not a single thing he can point to, including being mayor or lieutenant governor, where he's been successful. So the question now is going to be for the people of Pennsylvania, and then the challenge for Oz is to get people to understand who Fetterman is. If you like Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders and the Bernie Sanders manifesto, then vote for Fetterman. If you believe in law and order, if you believe in energy independence, and by the way, he's also a sanctuary state guy, a sanctuary city guy, Fetterman, if you believe in open borders, then go vote for the liberal socialist. Go ahead. Good luck with that. It's not going to work out for the people of Pennsylvania. I think Fetterman's out of touch with the rank and file, and I don't think he's going to lift a finger to bring back law and order. He's going to release a third of all people in jail. And I actually can't think of a worse guy in the U.S. Senate than him. So hopefully that message comes out. It's still early. It's August 5th. People historically start paying attention to midterms or elections right after Labor Day, and I'm sure that will be the case in Pennsylvania. And if he doesn't show up at debates, I think that'll speak volumes about maybe where his health is as well as everything else.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think one sentence says the whole thing. Would anybody in Pennsylvania move to Braddock, Pennsylvania? And I would say the answer to that is no. And that's where this guy was mayor. You don't want to live in Braddock, Pennsylvania.
All right. Appreciate the call. Thanks for the update. Quick break. We'll come right back. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. Back to our busy phones. Frank is in Delaware. What's up, Frank? How are you? Glad you called. Happy Friday, sir.
How you doing there, sir? It's an honor to speak with you.
Honor is all mine. What's going on?
I'm a small business owner. I live in Delaware, but I run 3 states, and I just wanted to call up and talk about where we're at in the economy, especially in the security industry. I own 2 companies, and we used to fill up the tank per truck for about $42-45, and now it's up to $118. So you can understand 2-3 tanks a week. We're looking at $800 to $1,000 more per month per fuel.
That's by the way, it's unbelievable. I filled up my car last weekend, and I paid $106 to fill up my car. And I'm like, I cannot believe I used to pay $40, $45, $50. And I'm like, I cannot believe, and it irritates the hell out of me. But if you're in business, now you got yourself a big problem. Can you pass those costs, all of them, on to your customers? I tend to doubt it.
Definitely not. You can't pass all of it on. You can try and raise your rate a little bit, but add an extra hour here or there. But it's not good. And also, along with the security industry, we have such a problem getting equipment. We've been very hard pressed to get fire alarm equipment for months. So with the chip shortage. So it's really disastrous. We're just hoping stuff doesn't break. But also one other thing, too, is that I take off video. I'm a big video guy. I take off video for the police departments of many people doing robberies and different things. And in South Jersey, they just take them in, take a report, and don't even take them to jail. They just put them out, and they have a court date. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So,
it's all. Let me tell you something. It's insane. It is insane. And look, are you able to make a living? Are you surviving, or are you going underwater?
I'm just hanging in there. We're just hanging in there right now. It's just sad.
It is sad. And you know what? The saddest part is it's all preventable. We have more domestic.
One other thing before you go, I want to tell you, I used to be the security man for Joe Biden.
Oh, really?
When they got elected in 2008. Yes, I handled his account many of the years that he was senator for the other company that I worked for at the time. We need to have a private conversation. I have much to tell you. And if I've been trying for over a year to get on with you for various different things. It actually took me 3 days to get on with you now.
Well, let me ask you this. So you did private security for him when he was vice president?
Yes. I worked for a company. I handled his account. The stories I could tell you are shocking. Okay. America needs to hear it. I'll tell you privately, and then you tell what they want, what you want them to hear. And I'll drive to New York and take a lie detector test to prove what I'm saying.
Wow. Are you talking about illegal activity?
All kinds of stuff. You have no idea. All kinds of stuff.
Let me ask you this. Cognitively, you see Joe Biden now, compare him to the person you knew back then. Is he the same person?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I haven't, when him and Obama got elected, I got out shortly after that. Because they changed the rules a little bit. They wanted you to be a Homeland Security contractor, and that basically means drop your drawers and show them all your financials, and very difficult to operate under that situation. So we gave them up. But
well, we'd love to hear your story. I'm going to put you on hold, and hopefully maybe we'll put you on TV and you can tell the whole world. We'll vet it all out, and we appreciate you being willing to share with us. I mean, there's so much about this family that if Americans cared or paid attention, if his last name was Trump, it'd be such a different story. That's the saddest part about where we are today. Like dual system of justice. One set of rules if you're liberal and you're a Democrat, but if you're a conservative, forget it. I mean, we don't have equal justice or equal application of our laws. That means we don't act as a constitutional republic. It's scary.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people who are doing extraordinary things. I release 3 episodes of Newt's World every week, and I want to invite you to listen. Hopefully, we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.
All right, news roundup, information overload hour, Sean Hannity Show. We need a little fun on a Friday. We just do. These are tough days. Anyway, 46 days till Election Day. Best election coverage available on your radio dial. I don't even know. I'm kind of torn on admitting this publicly, but it's true. So I always tell my audience the truth. But I happen to be really, really good friends with Stephen A. And my son is a sports nut, loves sports. I mean, Saturday, Sunday, I can't get in touch with my son unless I'm writing him about football, because that's his entire life is devoted to college and pro football. And anyway, so one day I was with my son and he didn't know that we were close friends. And I said, yeah, I could call him right now. He said, no way. Now, I don't think my son's ever watched or listened to my shows, but he watches every show that Stephen A. does and every show he's ever did. And the good news about Stephen A. is he's got a brand new podcast he's starting, which I think is such a great idea for him. He's so loved by everybody. And it's called No Mercy with Stephen A. Smith. Now, you spell no, K-N-O-W, which is pretty interesting to me. Now, here's the lineup of distinguished guests. Snoop Dogg is going to be on. LL Cool J is going to be on. Sue Bird is going to be on. Chris Cuomo is going to be on. And guess who else is going to be on this podcast? Yours truly. And this is going to destroy the podcast and destroy Stephen A.'s credibility with his own. What are we friends with that guy Hannity for? But I'm proud to call him my friend. He's one of the most gifted, talented broadcasters I've ever met. He's a dear, dear friend. I'm proud of all of his success, happy for all of his success. Stephen A., are you sure you don't want to bail on this? It might just kill your entire podcast.
I love how you try to paint it like it's dangerous for you to be talking to me. No, it's dangerous for me to be talking to you. Let's get that right now. The danger is all mine. Nobody's going to bother you. They're going to bother me, especially folks in the black community, but I don't care. It's not fair, and I don't pay attention to that nonsense.
Can I just say something? Why would people be upset when you have two people? We agree on some things. We disagree on other things. You've been on this show many times. You've been on TV with me.
Yes, yes. And disagreeing with you and trying to
disagree.
But you still won't listen. You still won't listen. But
I won't listen, but I'll hear you out, but you're not going to change my mind. There's a difference. I definitely want to hear. Well, first, number one, your success on ESPN is unprecedented. I mean, the show is a phenomenal show. You are a phenomenal broadcaster. I'm always interested in what you have to say. I love your fights with like Mad Dog Russo and some other people. It's just a lot of fun to watch, and I love sports, as you know.
Absolutely. You don't know sports, but
not like you do. No,
you don't know it, but you do love to watch it. There's no question. And shockingly to your listeners, let me tell you something. I have changed your mind on a couple of times, but we won't get into that today. At the end of the day, though, I really appreciate the kind words. Thank you so much, man. And I have been very blessed and fortunate to really succeed at ESPN. I've had my ups, I've had my downs, but in fairness and credit to you, you've always been supportive of me, even when you've disagreed with me from time to time. And so I've always appreciated that.
I will send you notes occasionally because I know that there are people, for whatever reason, the talk police out there that can't stand a different opinion. I have never one time, Stephen A., supported a boycott or a firing of somebody because of what they said on the air. And I never will. Because people in life, we're shooting by the hip. There's not one word that I've said in this interview that I thought about beforehand. It's just a conversation with two friends. We're on the air. Sometimes you may slip up and say something, whoops, you didn't quite come out the way you wanted it to come out.
Right.
And everybody's there, fire him, get rid of this. What if the person said something and thought about it later and they regret it and they apologize?
You and I have talked about that, and I've agreed with you for the most part. I just understand where it comes from in this day and age. So what happens is, especially in the world of sports, we'll use that as an example for the content, for the purposes of this conversation. When you have advertisers and sponsors who bolt and ultimately threaten to dramatically affect your bottom line, then if you're a business, sometimes that leaves you with no choice. So when it comes to something like that, I understand it. My problem is especially, and you and I have this in common, especially when it comes to people in this business, in our business, the willingness to pounce on somebody and be unforgiving for whatever it is that they said that you may disagree with and what have you, and do you think their career should end? I'm like, wait a minute. We're in a business. We understand you're speaking live, you're speaking off the cuff and extemporaneously. Stuff comes with it, and sometimes you may say something that you regret. And so to me, America's supposed to be the land of second chances in that regard. And that's where you and I are aligned in our thinking, especially when it comes to people in this business. They have no excuse for being so unforgiving about folks speaking, or mistakenly speaking, or uttering a word or a sentence, or whatever the case may be.
I love sports. One thing I don't like about sports is when politics gets into sports. Mm-hmm. Like this, I don't want to rehash the history of Colin Kaepernick and all that.
Right.
I don't think it's good for sports, and I'll tell you why. One of the coolest things is when you go to a football game, you go to a basketball game, you go to a baseball game, whatever the event happens to be. And what happens? You have people of all socioeconomic backgrounds, all races, and they're there usually with a shared passion, a home team, the sport that they all love. How many times have you been in the stands, Stephen A., and you find yourself high-fiving a stranger or buying a stranger a beer or sharing your popcorn with people? I mean, That's the atmosphere when you're at a sports stadium. The last thing we need to interject is, do you like Donald Trump or not like Donald Trump? Do you want to stand for the national anthem or not stand for the national anthem? It bothers me when politics intersects with sports.
Well, first of all, a couple of things. Number one, you bother a lot of people, so get over it. They're going to bother you with some things. So you got to get over that shit, man, because you bother people all the time. That's number one. Number two, you and I, and in your defense, you and the great one, Mark Levin, y'all have both disagreed with me on this. Let's take the Kaepernick situation into consideration. Kaepernick took a position. His position was to kneel before tip-off time during the national anthem. It did not interfere with the game. It did not violate his rights as an American citizen. It did not impede anybody's ability to enjoy the 60 minutes of football they came to watch. It did not violate any NFL bylaws. So at the end of the day, you're seeing something you don't like for a few seconds from an American citizen that had every right to do what he did, even if you disagree with it. That did not interfere with the game. Now, if he was taking the knee on the football field, when he was supposed to be taking the snap and dropping back to pass, we got a different problem. If he's taking the knee and it's interrupting the play and what people came to watch, that's a different animal. But for him to do something just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it ruins the experience.
Forget it. Let's take me out of the equation here.
Sure.
Look at what it did to the sport. It hurt the sport of football. It all those people with all those diverse backgrounds in that crowd. Right. It divided it's the greatest opportunity to unite people, and instead people are united. You got one group of fans over here clapping, one group of fans over here booing. Now, instead of the high-fiving, the buying the beer and sharing the popcorn, now you've taken a moment where people can put aside differences and find a common passion, and you're ruining it with politics. It's not the time and place for it.
Well, wait a minute.
I believe in freedom. Right. He's free to do it. The NFL is free to make their rules.
Right.
But I think it's a bad idea.
Well, wait a minute. But the people tell us that, Sean. The people tell us that when the ratings dropped and the audiences dipped for NFL games, fine. Then you saw people modifying their thinking. But when they saw that ultimately they could lock arms with one another and what have you, what happens is people return to the games.
Listen, they really only returned towards the end of last year, and this year has been their best ratings year in like 10 years. So the drop was significant. And my argument back to you is, Colin Kaepernick, I believe in freedom. I believe in liberty. I also believe the NFL as an organization has their own rules and regulations. That's up to them. But is it a good business plan? No. And is it ruining an opportunity for people with such diverse backgrounds to share their passion together? I think it's just not the time and place for it.
But the reality is, Sean, people are not going to always be aligned. You epitomize that every day. I do. To tens of millions of people who agree with you. I know tens of millions of people who disagree with you. They're not aligned. They wouldn't come
They're all your
show.
friends.
They wouldn't talk to you. They wouldn't want to be interviewed by you. They wouldn't want to interview you. They wouldn't want to talk to you. They wouldn't want to have a drink with you.
You're sending me home for the weekend with a self-esteem problem. Go ahead.
It's not a self-esteem problem. The point is, it happens, but ultimately America becomes better because in the end, you know what you learn to appreciate? The fact that you have the license to disagree and you can still move forward. What we got to do as a society is encourage folks that it's okay to disagree without being so damn disagreeable.
I'll tell you what I do love. Here's a cool moment at the end of every football game, usually. If they show it, sometimes they show it, sometimes they don't. Right. You'll have people from both teams, and sometimes even the refs, at the end of a hard-hitting game. Football players are gladiators. I mean, the average career of a football player is, 3.5 years?
Yes.
Most people are not playing in the NFL they're not playing as long as Tom Brady, who is just phenomenal to watch. What a great storyline for all of us that love sports. But here's the thing. At the end of that game, they form a circle, and they get arm in arm, and both teams together, coaches together included, sometimes the refs included, after they've tried to beat each other's brains out on the field. Right. And they pray together, thankful for the opportunity to have the jobs that they have and perform in front of such large crowds. And then, shake hands, high five, give each other a hug, and go to their respective locker rooms. That's cool.
Allow the sports expert to retort. That is not every player.
Nope.
The fact of the matter is, there's plenty of players who don't lock on and take a knee and share in the prayer because they don't like each other. They didn't get in a fight. They didn't commit criminal acts against one another, but they don't lock arms with one another.
By the way, I love fighting in sports. I've been a hockey player my whole life.
Yeah,
and hockey must never get rid of fight. I love the fight that broke out with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last weekend.
Right. I'm only telling you, you just made your own point. You pointed out how some come together. I pointed out how not all come together.
But it's not politics. God isn't really politics. There's a big difference, I think. Because here's the thinking of people, that half of people in a stadium, if you take a knee during the national anthem, how many people fought, bled, died, lost their limbs, were disfigured, fighting under that flag, out of respect for them? You can have your political disagreements. You could speak out loudly. NFL players usually have a pretty big platform outside of the game, and they can certainly use that platform to raise money and make things better in the cities they live in.
Sean Hannity, I'm your buddy. So let me tell you something. I'm gonna stop you right there. Okay? Yes, you do have people who do that, and it shouldn't be politicized. Fair enough. But you also have people who don't believe it was politics at all. They believe it was real life issues being being, confronted, that was confronting a disenfranchised community for many, many years. They don't view it as politics. The interpretation of it is not political. So they don't view it the way Sean Hannity or people who think like Sean Hannity might view it.
Let me give you an example where I agree with you.
It's not politics to them.
I've watched your show enough to know that you have been a very strong advocate for more minorities in positions on the coaching side of football and other sports and in upper management. And I agree with you. I absolutely think that some of these organizations have been atrocious in terms of their outreach. There's so much talent out there, and I think they've gotten the message now, but it's taken people like you pointing it out for a long period of time to get that accomplished.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to stop. But in the same breath, the very people that I support getting these positions, to speak to your point, I'm going to hold them accountable to the importance of upholding the standard that comes with the job. And if you don't do that, there's a price that you have to pay, because what we don't want to do is dilute the importance of those circumstances. Because if
all right, stay right there. I'm not cutting you off. I'm going to hold you over. I rarely do this. I'm going to hold you over, give you 5 more minutes on the other side. I've got to take a break. You understand that. No Mercy by Stephen A. Smith. It's launching September 26th, which is Monday. You don't want to miss it. I'm not sure what day I'm going to be on, but I'll be on. LL Cool J, Snoop Dogg will be on. I'm sure a lot of athletes are going to make it. We'll continue more with Stephen A. Smith on the other side as we continue.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people across a variety of topics. On Newt's World, we've had some extraordinary guests join us, like former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
Ending the war in Vietnam was a necessity in order to help heal the divisions in the country.
John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup.
The world has been winning the war against hunger for 4 decades. In 2014, it switched. We have a serious hunger crisis.
And House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
What I've really found the Republican Party to be, it's the party of the people, the working people of America.
I release 3 episodes of Newt's World podcast every week, and I hope you'll find my conversations engaging and informative, and hopefully we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast, right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people across a variety of topics. On Newt's World, we've had some extraordinary guests join us, like former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
Ending the war in Vietnam was a necessity in order to help heal the divisions in the country.
John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup.
The world has been winning the war against hunger for 4 decades. In 2014, it switched. We have a serious hunger crisis.
And House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
What I've really found the Republican Party to be, it's the party of the people, the working people of America.
I release 3 episodes of Newt's World podcast every week, and I hope you'll find my conversations engaging and informative, and hopefully we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast, right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.
All right, I want to remind all of you that are believers in the Second Amendment like I am, you're going to love Henry Repeating Arms. a family-owned business, 25th anniversary, and they're giving away $1 million through their Guns for Great Causes charitable arm, Tunnel to Towers Foundation, Building Homes for Heroes, Children's Hospitals. They help vets, law enforcement, first responders. And you're going to love your Henry. I have, as you know, I'm a gun collector. I have a number of Henrys. I love every one of them. Every product comes with a lifetime guarantee. Every single Henry I own, the best craftsmanship I've ever seen in a firearm. It's accurate right out of the box. It's reliable. It's affordable. And you get the owner, Anthony's personal guarantee, 100% satisfaction money back guarantee. They have a broad range of rimfires, both rimfire, centerfire calibers, 200 models to choose from. What I love is their unique variety of finishes, especially as a collector. There's something for everybody. If you're a hunter, an outdoorsman, maybe you need it for home defense, or you're a collector like I am. Anyway, you're gonna love your Henry. It's made in America or it's not made at all. Go to henryusa.com. One word, henryusa.com. They'll send you a free catalog, free decals, a list of dealers where you are, and you will love this company. You will love your Henry, and you will be as passionate about Henry repeating arms as I am. All right, 25 now to the top of the hour. Thanks for being with us. 800-941-SEAN. You want to be a part of the program. We'll get to your calls. 5 more minutes with Stephen A. Smith. I will be a guest. I'm not sure what day yet. His new podcast is launching on Monday. It's called No Mercy with Stephen A. Smith. Starts Monday. I'm going to be one of his first guests. I know LL Cool J is going to be one. Snoop Dogg is going to be one. Why wouldn't you put all of us on together? I think that'd be a great podcast.
It would be a great podcast, but I'd have to prep them for you. First of all, you're going to do most of the talking. They'll have to get used to that. You're going to do most of the talking. You're going to give very little time to ask questions. Okay, you're going to do all of these things, and this is what I tell people about it. It's like, you can't let Sean Hannity, just give his spiel. I said, stop. That's him. Sean Hannity is Sean Hannity all day, every day. You ain't changing him. Okay?
Do people really bother? Do people give you a hard time because we're friends?
Yes, they do. They do. They don't understand why I can talk. No, how I can even talk to you because I don't share a lot of your views. But the bottom line is, I tell them all the time. First of all, sometimes he's actually right. I hate to admit it, but he is. Number one. Number two. Listen. The bottom line is this: you've always been real about who you are. And I'm good with that. I don't have to agree with you to respect you and where you're coming from. When I don't like something, I pick up the phone and call you. If I'm challenged with something that you're saying, when I get to listen to you, I let you know. And
you let me know.
Regardless of what you'll tell other people, you actually do say from time to time, it's rare, but you have actually said to me, you got a good point. I got you.
But I'll tell you the one thing that you're not going to like this, but I'm going to tell you the one thing that bonds us. The one thing where our friendship lies. We both have a strong belief in God, a creator, natural law. We're endowed by our creator. I believe God created every man, woman, and child on this earth. That for me is fundamental, and it is basic, and it is ingrained in my heart, mind, and soul.
Okay.
And I want every human being, the word education is rooted in the Latin derivative educere, to bring forth from within. I believe every child born has talent and ability directly given to them from God. And a good education nurtures that talent. You have to live in a safe town and community. You have to have law and order to have it. You need a school that teaches reading, writing, math, science, history, and computers, which we don't have in many places, unfortunately. And those are the things that I talk about. But, when you have the common humanity, that's a great starting point for a friendship.
That's what it comes down to. It's a common humanity. There's quite a few things I don't agree with in terms of what you say, but it's not that. It's the fact that we've got politicians on Capitol Hill and their objective or some things that transpired behind the scenes that veer away from the kind of things you just alluded to. It's problematic for me in more ways than it is for you in some cases, and in more ways than it is for you than me in other cases. And so because of that, we sort of get lost in the shuffle because we think things should be done a different way. We think there's a different avenue that you could go down to accomplish.
Well, you could disagree
talking about, but it is
without being that disagreeable. By the way, you asked me for 20 minutes from your podcast, and I laughed. I said, "There's no way I'm going to be able to do. You're going to be able to do a 20-minute podcast. I'll predict it's going to go over an hour."
I predict that I'm gonna cut you down to about 40 minutes. I can tell you that much. I mean, no matter how much you talk to, but I will tell you this though. Here's the thing: you are right, because this is the thing. You say a lot of interesting and compelling things that open the floodgates of dialogue, and that's what I really got to give you credit for. Because even when I disagree with something, I love going to other people to regurgitate what you said, to see how they would feel and how they react when the cameras are off and they're away from everybody else. Those kind of things are food for thought, and you always provide that. So I really appreciate that coming from you, as annoying as you can be.
Why don't we end it on that high note? As annoying as you can be. All right, here's the deal. Do you know what day you want me next week for this podcast, or you don't know yet?
I'm going to have you, not yet. I'm going to have you on within the next 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks is where I'm going, and I might close that second week, which I don't know yet. It depends on how you sound and what you say. I don't know.
So you're going to edit it. You already said you're going to edit it. All right.
Listen, you know how you are. I might have an hour to get in 5 questions with you. Come on.
Maybe. If you got to 5 in an hour, that'd be a record of anybody interviewing me. I usually take the ball and I don't stop. I run. That's a sports analogy. Listen, I'm proud of you. I'm honored to be your. I thank you for your friendship. I think the world of you.
Same here.
You made my son's day. Frankly, you made his year when you spent time with him, talking sports with him. He loved it.
Yeah.
We're all going to get together pretty soon. The new podcast is called No More. What's that?
And you're treating. Don't be cheap. You're treating.
I'm treating, of course.
Yes. Okay.
Don't be expecting. I'm never. Linda, have I ever not paid for dinner?
Huh?
Linda's been around me for 20 years. Have I ever not paid for dinner when anybody goes out to dinner?
I would say that both you and Stephen A., dear friends, are equally giving and kind and always pay for everything.
It's my pleasure. Listen, I wish you all the success with this. Continued success at ESPN. I'm proud to be your friend. I'm very honored that you come on the show, and I look forward to being on your podcast. It's called No Mercy, but they spell no, K-N-O-W. I'm not sure why, but Stephen will tell it. I'm sure explain it at some point. Sir, good luck starting Monday. All right, my friend.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
800-941-SEAN, our number. You want to be a part of the program. Isn't he great? I just love Stephen A. Dave in Michigan. Dave, how are you? Glad you called.
Start with Stephen A., and that was no intention at all. But I don't think that a basketball game, a football game, or a baseball game is any place to show your anger and kneel for the game. I'm sorry. We have a flag. I've got uncles that died in Nam. I've got uncles that come from Nam just completely disturbed. I've got uncles that died later from Agent Orange. I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm 60 years old right now, Sean, and I'm sorry. That just struck a chord with me, and that was not what I called to talk to you about, Sean.
That's all right. Well, listen, I understand you're responding to our conversation with Stephen A. What's on your mind today? What's going on in Michigan? By the way, you've got a gubernatorial candidate there that I think can do pretty well.
You know what? I'm really kind of dumbfounded because we've got to put people at the polls, honest to God. We've got to put Republicans at the polls to watch this stuff. I believe that Detroit was stolen from us. And I'm not kidding. I mean, why would they put paper all over the window and stop us from coming in to watch the counts? I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And there is a two-standard system, Sean. There's no doubt about it. And I realized that when I started listening to you and telling me about Hillary, I mean, and Bleach Pit. Never heard of it before. I mean, it is. It's a two-standard system. Look at the FBI. My gosh, look at what Biden's done and his son. And are you kidding me? If Trump did that stuff, they'd be all over him. Right now, they're trying to attack him just for the fact that they can't. I mean, they want to stop him from running for president, Sean. You know that. I know that. I mean, it is absolutely unreal. Blows my mind what a system we have here. When I found out how crooked the FBI was, I mean, unreal. I told my wife, I said, are you kidding me? Are we living in a third world country or what? My wife is right beside me, voting for Donald Trump and voting. I mean, we're MAGA. So, unfortunately, they may be coming for us, Sean, It's crazy.
Hey, look, listen, right now, what we're hearing, and I can't wait to hear more from these whistleblowers. We heard from John Solomon today, and one whistleblower, but we're now learning that these FBI agents are saying that once great agency now has been taken over by politics. It's been politicized. We already know that the DOJ is weaponized. We already know we have a dual system of justice. This is why in 46 days, the people you elect, and I'm talking about at the state level, the AGs that you are electing, the governors that you are electing that will have standards in terms of voting, et cetera, integrity standards, so everyone can have confidence in election outcomes. And we don't have, the constant never-ending chaos, especially in some states. We need all of this. It's good for the country.
Sorry, John. We've already found out that there's two different standards for Governor Whitney here and the rest of the country. I mean, as soon as we started dealing with COVID, her husband's going to get his boat out of a frickin' dock, and she said that we can't use a boat with a motor. My gosh, I'm a fisherman, Sean. My father-in-law is 70 years old, and him and I have been best friends since I met my wife, which was 40 years ago. And we fish and we hunt, but we weren't allowed to use a motor? What the heck's that got to do with COVID, Sean? It's still so.
All right, I got to roll, my friend. God bless you. Appreciate you being with us. South Carolina, Peter on the Sean Hannity Show.
Hi, Sean. Hey, thank you very much for taking my call. I've been a long-time listener and started listening to you when you were just on that local station in that little city called New York City.
Wow.
Anyways, I've got 38 years of commercial real estate experience, and I have a few thoughts and comments that I wanted to share with you and your audience, okay, with regard to appraisals and that litigation that's taken place in New York State, if I may, okay?
Yes, sir.
I started to look at that 222 pages, and I read about 30 pages, and I gave up on it. I mean, it's just loaded with a bunch of fill, okay? But anyways, my comment is bank valuation is different than property valuation. The bank is only interested in one thing, risk. Okay, they're not really interested in appraisals. They measure risk, and that's all they care about. When they consider a loan, they try to arrive at the loan amount and minimize any risk that they have. They look at the borrower, they look at the asset value, and in many cases, they look at it on a global scale. They look at the assets that the borrower owns. So they're not just looking at that one asset. They're conservative, and they look at more than their value. It's all about the ability to repay the loan if something should go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, look, to me, this is the dumbest thing ever. I mean, anyone that's ever done a real estate deal, anybody knows that you have to get an appraisal. And appraisals can vary. I mean, people take into account different factors. They might come up with a different number. That's why anybody that's going to lend money, any real financial institution, any real bank is going to do their own due diligence, their own valuations, and they're going to make a determination whether or not your valuation is real and correct or not. And if there's a disagreement, you might negotiate it out, or they're just going to say no, and they're going to deny your application for the loan. They're not going to give it to you. They have a responsibility financially, a fiduciary responsibility to people that put money in their financial institution to make money. It's not that complicated.
Exactly. I deal with this every single day, and I performed a number of what we call BOVs, or broker opinion evaluations. It's an opinion, okay? And I worked with appraisers over the years, and I look at the computer every single day, and I deal with investors, buyers, sellers, and we use the same approach to arriving at value, but they don't represent real value. We only provide an opinion. An appraiser only provides an opinion. There's a big difference. There's a big difference between market value and
listen, I know people that tell me all the time, my home is worth blankety, 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 blank. It's up so much money since, it's really only worth that if you can get a buyer that will pay that. You can think it's worth, let's say you think your home is worth $1 million. Well, you can think that, but unless somebody's willing to pay $1 million for that home, it's not really worth $1 million. Now you look at comparable sales in a neighborhood. It gives you a pretty good feel of what the going rate might be, and you might come to an educated guess. You probably are somewhere in that area. But then you have market forces that might change the dynamics. If you go back 6 months ago, you had people, day one, open house, and flooded with 25 potential buyers, and 5 of the buyers are offering above asking price and bidding against each other to get the house because of the scarcity in the market. And you see that it's still happening in some places in Florida, but not like it was. But I think Florida will fare better because they have an influx of migration of Florida from other states, and states like New York are going to be hit really hard in the real estate market. Anyway, you make really good points. It's just sad that this is all about politics, and it's all about destroying one family, one person, and one corporation. And I think Professor Dershowitz was right. Letitia James, based on her comments running for office, should have recused herself in this case. Anyway, appreciate the call, my friend. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. Did you know your home address? That is part of the public record. That means cyber thieves can use that one data point as their starting point to attempt various types of identity theft crimes against you. Now, if they know where you live, well, that they can also give bad actors an ability to redirect your mail without your authorization, send you official-looking scam letters in the hopes that you'll reply with personal information. Look, all of us are putting personal information out there in public on the internet every single day, and LifeLock.com by Norton sees all of these threats that we would otherwise miss on our own. If they find information of yours that's compromised, you'll get an alert. If you're a victim of identity theft, you'll get a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist to fix it for you. It's a low annual rate, and you can save an additional 25% off your first year when you call 1-800-LifeLock, mention my last name, Hannity, 25% off, or go to LifeLock.com, 25% off with the promo code Hannity. Protect your good name, reputation, finances, credit score, 1-800-LifeLock, LifeLock.com, promo code Hannity. All right, that's going to wrap things up for today. A great Hannity tonight, 9 Eastern. All right, McCarthy, Republicans running on their commitments to America. We'll talk to them about how serious they are about these promises, these pledges. It needs to be a solemn vow to fight for those Make America Great Again principles, America First principles. Also, Newt Gingrich will weigh in on it. All coming up, 9 Eastern, set your DVR. Tonight, Hannity, Fox News you'll never get from the mob and the media. We'll see you tonight. Have a great weekend. Back here Monday.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interest. I enjoy talking with fascinating people who are doing extraordinary things. I release 3 episodes of Newt's World every week, and I want to invite you to listen. Hopefully, we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast, right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interest. I enjoy talking with fascinating people who are doing extraordinary things. I release 3 episodes of Newt's World every week, and I want to invite you to listen. Hopefully, we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast, right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.
Right, hour 2, Sean Hannity Show. 25 days. You get to hopefully get the country, begin the process of getting the country back on track. Things couldn't be any worse. You know, it's an amazing thing, the spin. This is 9 consecutive months over 8% inflation. Remember, Joe Biden inherited an inflation rate, gross domestic product of 1.4%. You look at everything you buy, every store you go to, and it is a reminder of this failure. Now, the worst part of this, too, is that they are lying to us and have been lying to us the entire time. They lied when they said it was transitory. They lied when they said today's inflation number is zero. It's zero. No, it was 8.5%. It wasn't zero. And they kept saying it. Joe said it not once, not twice. He said it repeatedly. Kamala Harris said it repeatedly. And yet it's only 0.2%, Joe says. I'm like, no, Joe, it's the 9th consecutive month that we have a 40-year high of inflation. And then as a result, now we have 30-year fixed rate mortgages, going now up to 7%. And when we get the next rate hike, probably another 75 basis points, then it's going to be 8%. And if it keeps going this way, you'll have double-digit interest rates. And then the economy, it'll slow down. And many Americans then will find themselves out of work, and not the Americans that don't want to work. Here's Joe. This is the last 9 months of just the same lying, the same blame Trump, blame Putin, blame anybody but yourself and your stupid economic policies, your new Green Deal socialism, your idiotic, imbecilic energy dependency plan that you have, which is, we'll save the planet. We're gonna transition to renewable energy. What renewable energy? The technology that they're talking about for the amount of energy we need is not in existence. Won't be for the next foreseeable future, for the next 20 years that I can see. But we won't drill domestically. We won't frack domestically. We won't produce energy domestically. We'll just import it, from countries that hate us. Saudi Arabia, OPEC plus. The plus is Russia. Venezuela. We'll beg the Iranians. It's bad for national security. We're losing high-paying career jobs in the energy sector. And then, of course, you're paying record prices at the gas pump. Told you they were going back up. Told you he artificially reduced it by putting our national security at risk and tapping into half of the strategic petroleum reserves. That's now at nearly a 50-year low. That was a dumb idea. That's for an emergency. Democrats losing elections is not an emergency, only to him. It's insane. But here come the lies, the excuses on cue. Listen.
We saw today's inflation data. 70% of the increase in prices in March came from Putin's price hike in gasoline.
We expect March CPI headline inflation to be extraordinarily elevated due to Putin's price hike.
Right now, and again, part of that justice is lowering cost. Right now, of course, we have the Putin price hike at the pump.
Inflation is a real issue. A lot of it is having to do with the COVID and supply chains, and now Putin's gas tax, essentially, by virtue of his invasion of Ukraine.
So clearly we are, and Americans are, struggling with inflation, but I don't think anyone predicted Putin's war in Ukraine. The cause of this inflation is the supply chain problems that were caused by COVID we're still struggling with.
One excuse after the other. Never mind the transitory lie. Anyway, David Sokol is with us, author of America in Perspective, defending the American dream for the next generation, which, by the way, I'm deeply concerned about. I am making the case, David, and you tell me if I'm wrong. You're an economist. You know the economy as well as anybody I know. I'm making the case that we have unilaterally disarmed economically by abandoning energy independence. It is sacrificing national security. It is killing off high-paying career jobs. It is one of the driving forces of inflation. We're now paying double what we paid per gallon per gasoline when Donald Trump was president, and it's going to go higher again. It's already up to $6.50 a gallon on average in California. It's going to be back up at $5 a gallon. I told everybody the strategic reserves was a Band-Aid. You tell me what you think.
Well, first of all, Sean, thanks for having me on, and you're exactly right. Add to that, back in 2020, some form of stimulus to offset the fact that the government was kind of mandatorily shutting down the economy probably made sense. We could debate how much, but since then, the $2 trillion, for instance, that were thrown into the economy last year, plus the $750 billion totally falsely named earlier this year, the Inflation Reduction Act. I assume they're not using that name anymore, given the results. But when you throw that much money in, and then you're expecting the Federal Reserve to be able to control inflation through interest rates, well, they have to try. But the administration's got to stop throwing fuel on the fire on the other side. And then your point about, we have a force-fed energy prices. America today could be producing 2 million barrel equivalent more a day had the Biden policy just not been put in place. You can't get elected telling people, I'm going to put you out of business, oil company. I'm going to put you out of business, gas company, because they're going to believe you, particularly since you've pretty much put coal businesses out of business. And so, they're not going to be there when you need them. And it's all part of this insane environmental strategy that has no plan. Just basically the strategy is make fossil fuels so expensive that people will think you're doing them a favor by forcing them to buy electric cars. If you really want to attack CO2, put together a plan, get the American people to buy into a consensus, then get the rest of the world to buy in. Don't just, bankrupt America with no effect to the climate if China and India and everyone else doesn't participate.
It's amazing when you unilaterally disarm. I find this whole thing humiliating, and now it's taken on a whole new significance. What are your thoughts on what Saudi Arabia put out in terms of their statement, the statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, exposing the fact that not only did the kingdom and OPEC Plus, meaning Russia, with OPEC, not only did they deny the request of Joe Biden to increase production, they are decreasing it. And Joe Biden, they revealed, the government of the kingdom clarified through its continuous consultation with the U.S. administration, all economic analysis indicate postponing the OPEC Plus decision for a month, according to what has been suggested, meaning Joe was asking, would have had negative economic consequences. Then they further went on to say that the kingdom stresses that while it strives to preserve strength in its relations with friendly countries, it affirms its rejection of any dictates, actions, or efforts to distort its noble objectives to protect the global economy from oil market volatility. And the kingdom affirms that its view of its relationship with the U.S. as a strategic one that serves the common interests of both countries. They exposed. Joe Biden basically said, delay the announcement, delay the cut, which he knew was coming, until after the midterm elections. That sounds like he's colluding with the Saudis, with OPEC Plus, meaning OPEC nations, and Russia. And he's trying to get them to do him a favor before the election.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, last time I checked, it was illegal to get foreign governments to be involved in U.S. elections. And there's obviously no reason other than that the president would be asking Saudi Arabia to delay the reduction. The reality is this administration wants higher oil prices. They just don't want them when it's inconvenient from an election perspective. But every voter out there should be paying attention that he didn't ask them, not to make the cuts. He hasn't, done things in America to help our production increase to offset oil prices. He actually wants higher oil prices. And he was basically telling the American population, and particularly those in lower income and middle income, I don't care that you're paying more for the pump. I just don't want it to affect these elections coming up in November. That should be a loud message.
That sounds like he's colluding with foreign countries to influence the outcome of our election. I thought if Donald Trump did this, what do you think the reaction of the media mob would be and Democrats would be?
Well, they would go crazy, just as they did with the lies from the Clinton campaign about Russian collusion. It didn't exist. They knew it didn't exist. And we've got to get back to holding people accountable, because this type of manipulation of elections is going to destroy our republic if we're not careful.
All right, quick break. More with David Sokol, the author of American Perspective, Defending the American Dream for the Next Generation. On the other side, then we'll check in with New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu will join us. We'll talk about General Bolduc and how he's doing, and can the Republicans pick up a seat in New Hampshire for the Senate? We'll get to that. Anyway, look, with the cooler weather, it may be tempting to cozy up, but there's something about fall. Maybe you feel like, we're doing a refresh for your home, get it ready for the holidays. If you want to pick a fall project that will make a big difference in any or every room in your house, go to Blinds.com. Getting new custom window treatments is simple. It's easy. No store beats their prices. You order online. You don't sacrifice style or service. They have a premium selection of Blinds.com of blinds and shades and shutters and drapes. They have my favorite motorized shades. It makes your life that much easier. And if you need help making a selection, their design professionals are always available for live consultations. That's free. If you need help measuring or installing, they got you covered there as well. Remember, no store can beat their prices. They don't have showrooms. They don't have retail markups. And by the way, right now you'll save an additional 40% off site-wide on top of their already low prices. And now through October the 18th, that's 4 more days, all vertical blinds are 45% off. Just go to Blinds.com. Tell them your friend Sean Hannity sent you.
America listens to Sean Hannity. And he's on right now.
All right, we continue. David Sokol is with us, author of American Perspective, Defending the American Dream for the Next Generation. It's pretty unbelievable that this is where we now find ourselves. All of these problems we're now facing were so preventable. We didn't need a 41-year high of inflation. We don't need to double our gas prices and even going higher. But you're right, they chose these policies. And what amazes me is there's no the era of big government is over, the end of welfare as we know it moment for Biden in his future that I can see. I think he is beholden to this radical transition to renewable philosophy, in spite of the fact that the technology is not there to provide the lifeblood of the economy like fossil fuels does. That's it. They're living in a fantasy world, and they're making every American pay dearly because of their adherence to this religious cult of climate that they believe in.
Well, and you can only assume they're doing it to cause a major disruption in our economy so that they can enact additional ways to control and take power away from the people. The reason that Adam and I wrote the book, American Perspective, is to remind people that our founding fathers were brilliant, and they put checks and balances into our system. And those checks and balances are being eroded every day by this president and the Democratic Party, sadly. And we've got to stand up. I had a conversation yesterday. A 31-year-old approached me, someone that I've known, but he said, David, why are you opposed to the president giving away $10,000 and $20,000 for tuition payment and for giving those loans? And I said, well, let me ask you a question. If the president raised your interest rate 2%, would you be good with that? Well, he doesn't have the right to do that. Why? Where does he have the right to forgive your loan? Those are my dollars, your dollars. They're every taxpayer's dollars. He has to have Congress's authority to spend that money. Now, you wouldn't like it if he raised interest rates, but you're fine with him. And the individual actually said, gosh, David, I never thought about it that way. You're right. He either does have the right or he doesn't. We've got to take away this authoritarian mentality where the Democrats think they can just do it, even when the court tells them they can't, and even when Congress tells them they can't.
Oh, you have Democrats openly saying they're not going to agree or abide by Supreme Court decisions. Even the guidance on dating ballots in Pennsylvania that the court put out, we're told that Pennsylvania officials are rejecting the Supreme Court's guidance, just like other states are rejecting the Supreme Court's opinion on the Second Amendment. Just like Joe Biden bypassing co-equal branches of government and the legislative process and the legislative branch by just, unilaterally by executive fiat saying we're going to forgive student loans. Now that's being challenged in the courts. I think he will lose. But the fact that he's doing it, trying to do it in that authoritarian way, as you say, is scary to me.
Yeah, and he's doing it knowing he can't do it. He knows the court will overturn this, but why is he doing it? To garner votes in November. If it gets overturned in December or January, he doesn't care. That's a new chapter in American politics where we have an administration that does things they know are wrongful, just because it'll get them votes, and then it'll go away later, and they'll say, "Oh, gee, it's the Republicans' fault." The American people need to stand up. And by the way, I'd say the exact same thing if a Republican was the president.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you being with us. David Sokol, author of America in Perspective, Defending the American Dream for the Next Generation.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people who are doing extraordinary things. I release 3 episodes of Newt's World every week, and I want to invite you to listen. Hopefully, we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast, right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.